the political side of it, and then there's the real story.
There's a lot to unpack right there. It wasn't quite the interview I thought that was going to be.
There's a reason for it.
This will be officially my favorite podcast I've ever done.
But obviously, I'm a big fan of Clive Davis. I saw here on your resume your relationship with Clive Davis School, NYU. He's iconic. I actually know him, met him in person a few times. He loves to bring his dogs to the Chinese food, Peking duck. He would recognize me there because I like to eat duck, and so does he. But all kidding aside, he's iconic, and you're in the music business, and you work with some iconic artists. I wondered how you got to teach and be a professor at that Clive Davis School of Music.
A good friend of mine, Jeff Rabhan, who was a former A&R guy, and his claim to fame as an A&R person, he discovered Hanson, Mbop.
Oh yeah, Mbop.
Of course, and he was the chair of the Clive Davis School of Recorded Music at NYU, and we've always been close, and he's followed my career, and he reached out to me to be an artist in residence and also an adjunct professor. So I spent a couple of semesters, a fall through spring, going into the school, doing songwriting classes with the students, just talking about the industry, my experience being a creative entrepreneur. And it was an amazing experience because I graduated from Louisiana State University, go Tigers, in Baton Rouge, Louisiana. And after my freshman year, I'd always harbored grand ideas of going to film school. And I was accepted to the NYU, the Tisch School at NYU, and their film program. But my parents said, wait a second, you've got a scholarship at LSU, so you're going to school free, and there's no way we can afford or we'll pay for you to go to NYU. So it was kind of like a full circle moment for me though I didn't get to go to NYU and the film program, suddenly 40 years later, I was able to be a teacher there and be at the Tisch School, and so it was a charmed time.
Yeah, you and I have a little bit of a similar background. That is, I didn't graduate from college, but I did attend college, and then later on I was asked to go to Pepperdine and teach a class, which is the strangest effect because I was a hedge fund manager and global financier, American financier. I've done a lot of finance and IPOs in my lifetime. And you either get a degree and become a professor, or you become an expert in a topic and become a professor, right? One of the others. The idea that you have good, I remember that, it was double platinum in '95. So the reality is that how many people have a double platinum album? I want to, there's a question here, and that is, I'm a big racing fan. And the Indy 500 is something I go to every year. We have cars in the Indy 500. I think we took 6.
You know Tony George? Did you know the family?
Tony. I sponsor his team. Tony George. So Ed Carpenter Racing. Ed Carpenter is his stepson, and we are the primary sponsor for Ed Carpenter Racing. And Tony's a personal friend. Love Tony. Love Tony. Love him.
I've met Tony in the pagoda, as they call it, and then. There was a time when I was close with Kerry Agajanian.
Oh, there you go. Yeah. Wow.
And so I know some of the world of indie, and now my wife, who's an executive at Gibson Guitars, is doing a lot of activations and stuff with indie and Formula One and NASCAR here.
So Gibson has a competitor called Sur Guitar. If you call them a competitor, they're much smaller than Gibson, but I know that space. But the point I was making about indie is we talk about winning the Indy 500, and I realized only 75 people in the whole world out of 8 billion, and probably the sheer call it 12 billion that have ever lived in this world have ever won the Indy 500.
Right.
And when I saw your resume, I thought to myself, how many people have had a double platinum album? Number one song.
Very few.
Right. That's my point. Is like, so if you think about you being a professor, you have done something that very few people do. Like very few. There are some, but the numbers are actually so tiny relative to how many people have walked on this earth. Or like, how about in modern music time? So let's say from 1940 to today, that number is very small.
It's a small number, and it's something that gives comfort to a lot of musicians, because in any field, it's easy to measure yourself against your peers
Sure.
and what they've done and what you haven't achieved and what was fair in business and what wasn't, and you can get really caught up in that, and it can bring breed a lot of cynicism, and I think of cynicism being cynical as the kiss of death in any endeavor, in any field, especially something creative. But when you think of everybody, for me in music, when I think of everybody that picked up a guitar, who started a band, who tried to write a song, who got a deal, and the success I've been able to have, I'm very grateful, and I'm in the 1%. That doesn't stop me from looking at somebody like Chris Martin and Coldplay, or Tom York and Radiohead, or Harry Styles, and like, my song was as good as that song. Why can't I sell out, Madison Square Garden instead I'm at Irving Plaza, so I can go down that road. But you're right. It's a rarefied group that gets to have a lot of success in their field. And the older I get, the more grateful I am.
So your song that you wrote for Taylor Swift, what was the name of the song?
It's called Breathless.
Yeah, I knew that. I just had to get that on tape.
It's called Breathless, and it was song 12. It wasn't a song we played live, and it was never a single. And the fact that Taylor found it at the end of a record and was like a fan was amazing. But it's kind of it's an illustration how, despite all the noise that goes on in the world, where we're so busy now with social media, and it's a constant barrage of things coming at us. The one thing that still bubbles to the top is authenticity and a good idea, a good product, a good song, and that's the thing that keeps me going, because that the fact that she plucked that song from the oblivion of an album from 2006. Is pretty amazing.
Yeah,
and
I want to interrupt you because I want to ask that question. I don't want to lose this thought. Okay, so Taylor Swift had to find a song that was number 12 on your album, decide that she wants to make it, have someone reach out to you to make it. Does that mean more to you than the double platinum? I don't know. I mean, she's an iconic songwriter, one of the rare. I asked this because recently I got a chance to see something about Celine Dion from a friend of mine. And it's, Celine doesn't really write her own music, but Taylor writes her own music. So she had to really, really, really want to use her song.
Really look. And people who write their own music, we're always hesitant to cover a song, because we're in our minds we're like, well, I can write a song every bit as good as that.
Sure.
So yes, it's really cool, and her songwriting has gotten better and better, and she's such an astute. Not only what you'll find in It's easy to see this in business, but the musicians who make it and consistently have success, not only are they great musicians and artistic minds, but they're really astute business people, and Taylor is one of those. So to have her do one of my songs and do it repeatedly, and I heard she pulled it out. She was down in Sao Paulo, Brazil recently, and she played some of it. At least that's what fans said. Is really cool.
Yeah, some of the things that she's been doing in music, about like how she treats her staff, how she went directly to bring her film to the movie studios and bypassed Hollywood, some crazy stuff.
Well, go ahead.
No, you go ahead.
Well, and also what she did is it was public knowledge, and it was some news a couple of years ago when. Her old masters, the actual physical recordings to her early albums, were sold by her label to a guy named Scooter Braun.
Oh no, I know the story. Trust me, I've met Scooter. I know the story really well. But let's bring it out for the audience.
Well. So famously, musicians don't own their masters. You sign a deal. The traditional, they were always incredibly unfair deals, but you got maybe 15 points. 18 percentage points for every dollar. So 18 cents on the dollar. And it was an onerous contract that it was written into the long form that it was a work for hire. and you never got your master. And now today, the master is the most important thing, the actual physical recording, because in this world of streaming, Spotify and stuff, songwriting royalties are not what they used to be. So there's a lot of worth. There's a reason that labels are making more money now in the streaming era than they ever have before. And so Taylor wasn't even allowed to have a chance to buy those masters back to those early albums. So rather than just kind of just shrug her shoulders and walk away, she painstakingly re-recorded all these albums, then added cool features with people like Tim McGraw and Chris Stapleton, and did these releases, but they were called,
Taylor's version.
Yeah, well, it was Taylor's version. I was thinking of the actual names, but they were all Taylor's version, and they all went #1. And now, those are the ones that are being used to sync up in film and commercials. And she doesn't approve any of the masters that Scooter and whoever else owns. So just it's a good example of how greed cannot serve you well in business and ultimately screw you.
I think I've seen her talk about that they didn't even call her. They didn't even talk to her about it.
Yeah.
But
yeah.
So,
you don't cross Taylor Swift, Todd. You don't do it.
Oh, I'll be sure to remember that.
Remember.
I don't know that Taylor and I will be doing any business together soon, but
You never know.
I'll be sure to remember that. Although I am a big fan of Taylor, and I'm a big fan of Katy Perry, and a lot of people out there like that. I'm all over the map, like a Masters and Puppets, a little Metallica. At the same time, I'm playing Lover by Taylor Swift. So whatever.
Listen, but if you look at most people's playlists on Spotify, it's not just one genre. It's not all metal, like Metallica, or it's not all Katy Perry or Taylor Swift. It's kind of schizophrenic what people listen to.
Sure.
And so you're more normal than you think. I started a music festival that we're about to celebrate our 10th year, and it's a multi-genre music festival, and people thought we were crazy to have Pearl Jam and Pink on the same bill, but now that model is
Foo Fighters, Timberlake, all that stuff, right?
Oh yeah.
You're talking about pilgrimage?
Pilgrimage Festival,
Yeah,
yes, sir.
Yeah, cool. That's that. I love that stuff. I mean, I love music so much. I wonder. I got a lot of people must obviously, but I'm fairly consumed by it. I was thinking about as getting ready for this podcast about how much music I consume. And I was driving home last night because I was in Utah at our sales center, and I was told by my assistant I had to get back because we canceled this before, and I better get here to do an interview with you. And on the way down here, I had some of my staff members in the car, and it's a 6-hour drive, and about 2.5, 3 hours into the drive, I'm like, okay, time to sing. Put on my music. I have my iPod that or whatever the hell it's called, my phone that. It has all the lyrics, but I know most of them because for some reason I can remember all the song lyrics.
That's a gift, Todd.
And I know I'm lucky there. And then I'm blasting music out the whole way for 4 hours, thinking that the drive just blew by as we sing music. There's a question here, and that is, I just had at my RiskOn 360 conference, Jim Meyer, who was the chairman CEO of Sirius Satellite Radio, who bought Pandora.
Right.
Jim's a friend, he's in the racing business. And I asked him the question, does the streaming model work? And his answer was no. He thought that music would always exist, but for the artist, the streaming model isn't paying off like they think, right? And I know you have a double platinum album. I'm wondering, what's the status of the streaming model for you? Like, are you a fan of it in terms of the way you're paid? You're not a fan? Do you think it's broken?
As well, there's two parts to that question. There's two answers to that question, Todd. One is, as a fan of music, I love the access, the ease, how intuitive Spotify or Apple Music or Pandora are, and having it at your fingertips. Every song, not just the songs you downloaded, and having it on your Sonos system at home, right? It's an amazing time to be a music fan. You can just listen to anything you want to at any time. So that's great. And I wear two different hats. On the other hand, I'm a songwriter, and my bread and butter, the what you built your catalog, the worth of your catalog on, what was songwriting and the royalties. And traditionally, with the sale of physical albums, CDs, cassettes, and all that, the dollar was split 50-50. 50% went to the master owner, many times the labels, as we talked before, and 50% went to the songwriters. So in the old model, being a songwriter was crazy lucrative, almost better than Ezra albums in the 90s. And then all the songs I've written from other people, from Meatloaf and Blondie to Taylor or James Blunt, it was a great time. Unfortunately, when the streamers came along, there was no copyright law concerning digital distribution. In fact, the last major copyright law was written in 1972, well before the digital even existed. So the streamers were allowed to come up with their own scale of how they would pay, and not surprisingly, it was like 0.00000001 for every stream. You would get that fraction of a cent. So since the advent of streaming, songwriters are really getting screwed. But recently, about 3 years ago, the Music Modernization Act it was a bipartisan bill that was voted in that's starting to bring some parity to songwriters. But it's going to be a tough road. The middle class of songwriters is wiped out. There's just no money to be made. The songwriters who are crushing it, who are getting co-writes on insert huge artists, Taylor Swift, Harry Styles, they're doing well. But the middle class of songwriters is gone. So now it's imperative for songwriters to ask for part of the master. So there's on one hand, the streaming model works great for consumers, and I'm a consumer. On the other hand, as a songwriter, it's tough times.
I saw this podcast or short on something, and it was Snoop Dogg talking about 1 billion streams, and he calls up his manager and said, so what kind of money did I make on that? And he goes, $40,000 or something.
Yeah.
$40,000 for 1 billion streams. It's like, and it's Snoop Dogg. He was pretty pissed off about it. I got to. Do you make any money from Good or no?
Good has been very good to me. No pun intended. That song, where you make your money as a songwriter, there's still terrestrial radio. There's still when you go into a restaurant, you often see a sticker or a decal on the door that says BMI or ASCAP. Those are the PROs, or performing rights organizations, that collect money for the public use of songs. And when you go to a restaurant or a bar, and there are quarterly fees paid. So there's still, if you have hits, you can still make money from terrestrial radio, from the licensing, from the PROs, and also when your songs are used in television and film. But again, if you're a new writer and you don't have that catalog of old songs and you don't have hits, you just have album cuts, it's a tough time for sure. And Snoop's right. 1 billion streams, 40K, it's nuts. So there are songwriters who have hits in the modern era, and they're struggling to make ends meet.
So you wrote a parable,
Yes.
the greatest song, sparking creativity, igniting your career, and transforming your life. I love books. Tell us about the book.
Well, they say that nothing good happens in a bar after 2 a.m., and they're usually right. But there was about 8 years ago, I was in a bar after 2 a.m. in New Orleans during Mardi Gras, and I had ridden in the Hermes Parade, and I was a little peckish. I may have been overserved, and I was trying to get something to soak up the alcohol. And I ran into a buddy who was in YPO, Young Presidents Organization. He's a good friend who's an entrepreneur. I'm in Dallas, and he asked me, and they had hired Malcolm Gladwell to speak for them and their group during Mardi Gras. Who knows how much that costs? But he asked me to, hey, would you want to do a speech for us in several months? And I said yes. So several months later, I had to come up with a speech, a presentation to these business leaders and entrepreneurs based in Highland Park, Dallas. And they were all astute men and women, very successful. And I came up with the tools that I've learned or had to learn over 30 years in this music career, the ups and downs, the business anecdotes, the crazy stories. And I started doing these speeches that turned into YPOs, then Disney and Google and Salesforce. And about 3 years ago, I decided I need to put this into a book. And my agent was also saying, you need a book. And so I started looking. I didn't want to write a prosaic, how-to or a business book. I wanted it to be something that was engaging, and I love narratives. If you look at my songs, if you look at "Breathless," the song that Taylor Swift sings and recorded, it's a narrative. So I decided I would do a business parable, and I looked at some of the business parables that I had read, Rich Dad Poor Dad, Who Moved My Cheese, books like that. And look, I was an English major at LSU, and so I will always be a bit of a snob when it comes to writing. And I was struck by two things: how short a lot of business parables are, and how poorly written they were. But they did really well. So I was like, that's my the business parable. But I wanted it to be good. I wanted it to be engaging, and I came up with a character who's a journeyman songwriter named Jake Stark, living in modern Nashville, Music City, and we meet him when he is let go from his longtime publisher, and in the same week he is introduced to an enigmatic billionaire named Sir Daniel Smith Daniels. And yes, it's a tongue firmly planted in cheek. There's a little bit of a spinal tip of the hat, and his life changes and is transformed. And that's really the genesis of the book and where it begins.
All right, those guys who are watching this, all of you out there in the audience who are watching this, if you text TGS to 26786, TGS, which is the greatest song, to 26786, it'll be on the screen. And the first 25 people to text TGS, we're going to send you the book for free. We like to do that kind of stuff.
You speak of this book?
That book right there. That book right there. Voila.
You know what it smells like?
What?
Success.
There you go. Look at you.
It feels like passion. Feels like big returns.
So, all right. So we're going to get people a copy of the book, the first 25 people.
Thank you.
I assume it's on Audible or no?
It's Amazon, Barnes and Noble, anywhere you go to get books. It's online, brick and mortar, and there is an Audible version. I did a spoken word version of the album where I voice all the different characters of the book, and I did it right here, and it was amazing fun. And the producer of my book is the same guy that did Spare by Prince Harry. And so it's an amazing sounding audiobook.
You have twins, boy, girl, or two girls?
Two boys.
Two boys.
They're fraternal. It's incredible how different two people can be from the same parents. And they just turned 15, and they're awesome kids. And they're excited about the holidays. So they're running around here. I'm surprised you haven't heard Dad yelled up from the stairwell.
I have a boy-girl twin, so they are completely different. They just turned 18, and they're both pains in the asses. But I love them. Yeah, I love them. I actually have four kids, but the two youngest are the most eclectic. The two oldest are off to college and done and already working in their careers, and the two youngest are trying to figure it out, still at home. So,
everybody has their own path. My oldest son is 24, and the biggest thing as a parent is not trying to project what you think is the correct path for success. And you just have to sit back. You have to drive them crazy with advice, and then let them. They got to live. They got to make their own mistakes and their own successes, and it's really fun to watch.
Do you mentor anybody in the music business? Because I asked that question because I meet a lot of people that want to be in your space, but they don't really kind of know how to do it. Do you Do you teach anybody anymore? Like you were at Clyde Davis, do you do anything around mentoring?
Well, I do, and I'll speak at Belmont Music College. That's right on Music Row. It's one of the best music schools in the country, rivaling the Clive Davis School. But I publish a lot of writers, and I definitely mentor the artists I write with, that I work with. I've been able to have a really long career in a notoriously fickle and short-lived career, and it hasn't been without its mistakes, But the longer that I've been in business and in life, the more that I wanted to have some kind of purpose, and that I want to share knowledge with people. And so the answer is a long-winded yes, I do. And I get a lot of, if you want to get it back, you got to give it away first.
Sure.
And I love mentoring young artists and helping them make good decisions across the board.
So I'm just curious where your influence came from. I remember better than Ezra. I was always into that kind of, I grew up in Southern California, Huntington Beach, Newport Beach. For some reason, I always felt like I had, maybe it was in my mind that I always had like sort of new gen music. Maybe I didn't, but I used to go up to Hollywood, go up and listen to bands, go to Troubadour, all that stuff.
Oh, God, such a great, iconic place.
And you were up there. It's funny you talk about Chris Martin. My friend is part owner of that. Remember that club where River Phoenix died? It was called the Viper Room?
The Viper Room.
Yeah. So
it used to be called the Central.
Yeah. So one of my friends, they re-upped it and they brought it back, and they had this small little group of people have a band perform, and Chris Martin was there next to me watching the guys perform.
Amazing.
It's driving me crazy because I can't remember who was performing. But I always liked that sort of, at least my experience in Hollywood was you could be fairly close to the bands that were kind of growing up there. You could be like maybe a little bit of a groupie if you wanted to. You were right kind of there and you knew when they were playing. Yeah. So where did you get, it feels like that's a little bit of more my genre of when I was growing up.
Sure.
How old are you?
I'm 57.
Okay, I'm 54, so we're right in the same category.
We're right in the same wheelhouse.
Right, the same wheelhouse.
If you look on my Wikipedia, it says 55, because before we were signed, when we were all 25, we were unsigned and we thought we were too old. So we lied about our age by 2 years, as pathetic as that sounds, but somehow it got into all the databases. So to this day, it's in Wikipedia or in a newspaper, and in the middle of nowhere, celebrity birthdays, I'm always 2 years younger. And my buddies from college and high school that see it just, they'll do a screenshot and say, "You're pathetic." And I'm like, "Yeah, but I'm 55.
Yeah, there you go. But where'd you get the influence?
The influences. I think the influences started for me with the first 5 albums that my dad brought home many moons ago. He was a music fan, but he wasn't, an aficionado. But somebody at the music store where he bought our first stereo and turntable was pretty gifted. He brought home Led Zeppelin, Houses of the Holy, Elton John, Goodbye Yellow Brick Road, Stevie Wonder, Intervisions, the Sly and the Family Stone album. It's a white cover with Sly doing a flying karate kit in black leather. And then Grand Funk Railroad were an American band. So those are the 5 albums that were kind of the foundation of my music, especially Elton John. But for me as a songwriter, I think it was really the mid 80s and with the advent of bands like REM and Drivin' and Cryin' and the Smiths and the Pixies and all that alternative music, and living in the Southeast, going to school at LSU, and going from school to school, it was this amazing time to be a music fan there. And there were so many bands signed out of there, and there was a long history of artists almost on that same path, playing fraternity parties, bars. It went all the way back to Sam Cooke and Booker T and the MGs, to bands like B-52s, REM, and then later bands like Driving and Crying and Better Than Ezra. So it was a really fertile time to be a music fan in that late 80s. And that's when you listen to the early Better Than Ezra songs, they sound like REM for sure. And then replacements and stuff like that.
When I think about the music I started liking, it's funny you say Led Zeppelin, because my mom was a single mom, and I remember the Hindenburg on the front of the Led Zeppelin album, the first kind of one I played. Then I remember Michael Jackson, Off the Wall.
Sure.
And I think the first album I ever bought myself was Duran Duran Rio, like 1979 or 1980, right?
One of my favorite albums.
Yeah, one of my favorite of all time. I remember playing it over and over again on a turntable, and having cassettes and all that stuff is kind of, it's just.
I had the 8-track.
Oh, there you go.
Of Rio, yeah.
No way, and really?
The beauty of listening to your favorite song that would fade out, would go and fade back in as it went to the next track. Oh yeah, 8-track. I had the album, but my buddy had the 8-track, and we would listen to it in his Monte Carlo.
He had an 8-track of Rio. Wow.
Oh yeah.
It's a funny where I grew up, and I think everyone has these stories of people they grew up in the music industry. Scott Weiland and I went to high school together. Obviously, he passed away, and a bunch of other bands, like sort of local to Southern California, like Social Distortion out there.
Social D and Rocket from the Crypt, and all those bands,
and Sublime, which is huge, which was in Southern California. To me, it's kind of a novel to me that someone's able to be in the space, like you're able to stay in the space. Like, so the thought I'm having is you've been able to stay in the space for 30 years.
Yeah.
Are you mesmerized that you made a career out of it? Because I think of this so eclectic. Like, how do you guys work? You don't have a normal work schedule. You make music when you want to, but then you got to make a living off it. But if you get a hit, you can make money off it for a long time. It seems like a really hard career to get. How did you do it? I mean, you've been there for 30 years.
What I found, actually that's where the speech in the book come from, is that the things that have sustained me in my career, that continue to keep me nimble and inspired and successful in this business, are the same tools that everybody uses in business. It's the same things that are spoken about in just pure business books. And that was the aha moment for me. Things like collaboration and filling the well and changing your attitude, things that I talk about in the book. And so for me, it's been knowing when I'm not being successful, and knowing when to push myself and to continue to be inspired and look to others, my peers, on what they're doing. And that came after being dropped, in the early 2000s. And I was going to go to law school. That was what I was going to do initially after graduating LSU. But I gave myself 3 years to make it while my LSAT was still good. But 2001, I was dropped, and I considered leaving music. But there was a saying that my father always said that nothing. He would tell me, Kevin, nothing changes if nothing changes. So I realized I want to stay in the music business, but I have to do things differently. And prior to that, I always wrote the songs myself. I was an army of one. If your music wasn't as good as mine, and then that was my mindset. So at that time, I started incorporating things differently in my life. And studying not only great producers like Max Martin, who was having success then with Britney Spears and NSYNC, and who's still having it now with The Weeknd and Miley Cyrus, but also studying, books by Jack Welch, and I was seeing all these parallels, and how music people work who continue to be successful and how business people work. And that was my aha moment. The first thing that I changed in my life was collaborating with people, surrounding myself with talented people. And that became the bedrock for what sustained me for 30 plus years. And that's what I wanted to, that's what I shared, that first speech I talked about that I did in Dallas, and refined it. And that's really what the book was about. For me, the epiphany about writing the book was realizing, wait a second, the things I do to stay relevant and successful in this business are the same things that everybody does in every business, but I'm in a business, the music business, that people are captivated with naturally, and it feels sexy, and it's interesting to people. And that was like, wow, I can write this book about this person in the music industry, and I can get these points across in a very palatable and interesting way.
You prefer being a songwriter, or do you prefer performing?
It's really kind of split, Todd. They both inform the other. When I'm out performing, I'm being inspired by the travels. You know, I just got off a tour this summer. We did a tour. Better Than Ezra did a tour with Train. We played all over the country, and just when I'm out on the road, I'm getting fodder and inspiration for writing songs. And then when I'm writing songs in this studio and other studios in Nashville, you know, I'm building a catalog that I'm going to go play live. So they're both important to me, you know. But it's really, for me, being able to have a successful career in, you know, over 30 years has been about wearing a lot of different hats, you know, in my business. And what I've found, and you found within, you know, within your business, there's a lot of different disciplines and a lot of different hats to wear, and disciplines that you have to. You think because I'm in the music industry, I know about everything in the music industry, and then when you delve into it, you don't. So what's kept me, I put a lot of irons in the fire. Look, because I wasn't Chris Martin with Coldplay that can be just that and be such a huge band. I had a band that still plays live and does well, but I wanted to do different things. So that's why I do music publishing. I have a festival. I'm involved in artist management. So it's about learning, continuing to be excited and learning new angles and disciplines within my own industry.
If you could explain to me the difference between any Coldplay song ever, then I will listen to it. I couldn't tell the difference. They all sound the same to me. I'm not saying he's not brilliant, but...
Oh, yeah. I just use Chris as... It could be Billy Joe, or it could be Bono, or, you know, just a band that was just massive and continues to be massive.
Yeah.
You know, that rare breed.
Yeah, I just saw you two at the Spear in Vegas, because I live in Vegas. And I will tell you, one of the most mesmerizing... Well, first of all, the venue, it may be the most incredible venue, if not ever, I've ever seen in my whole life. Being inside that was just incredible. The most insane thing ever.
It's so rare that, remember in October when the first Instagram images and videos of people going there started populating, you know, your feed. It's rare that you see something on Instagram that blows you away. And just the visuals on the phone of the U2 show at the Sphere were amazing. I went 2 weeks ago and was just blown away. Yeah.
I would love to do something personal when you're in Vegas. I think you'd be a great inspiration to be at our Risk On conference next year, Formula One. We have it every year in Vegas, the weekend of Formula One. I'd love to have you out as a speaker. I'd even love, and I'd like to say this ahead of time, maybe as a band playing, we had a band this year, maybe Better Than Ezra could play at the conference, which would be great.
I'm going to be speaking. I'm speaking in Vegas, I think, February 6th.
Let's if it's possible, let's plan on meeting up. I'd love that to be the case.
I would love it.
I'm mesmerized that Better Than Ezra is still playing. That's what which is just great to hear. I mean, I always love to see bands that are from that period of time. I'm curious, when you go to perform, like, I'm a huge Sarah McLachlan fan, gigantic, right? And there was a point in time when she was iconic. She is not getting the same demand that she had before in terms of venues.
Sure.
So you're able to see her at smaller venues. But I'm wondering, like for you, do you have this sort of iconic group of people that go to see Better Than Ezra, or what's it like for you?
Ezra kind of, we got to a certain level of success, which is playing about 1,500 to 2,000 to 2,500 seat venues, theaters and stuff like that, like House of Blues at Mandalay Bay, or the Sanger Theater in New Orleans. And then we just kind of stayed there. And it's there's the bigger bands we talk about. Then you mentioned Sarah McLachlan and the Better Than Ezras. The interesting thing is, a lot of people say, well, I wonder what they're still doing. They're still out there making music, and packing those rooms. And so we have an incredible fan base, and you see a lot of familiar faces. A lot of people travel from show to show, but the really fun thing now is that you see their kids. You see them with their kids.
Oh, that's great.
And we're almost getting to, we haven't seen grandkids yet, but it's coming. So we've been really fortunate, and it's been through a lot of hard work. It's fan engagement, continuing to put new music out, being a great live band. You asked the question, what's it like as a songwriter or a musician? It's come full circle. Back in the day, the way you made music was getting out on the road and playing live and being a compelling live act that people wanted to come see over and over again. That's what it is today. The bands that are doing well are the ones that are great live bands. And Better Than Ezra, we cut our teeth in the Southeast, like I mentioned, the Southeast part of the United States, where you had to be good. There was so much music, and we were inspired by great bands. So when we play, we put on a great show, and it keeps people coming back now for 30 plus years.
I'm going to be thrown out the window if I don't ask you about Tipitina's or whatever. I don't know the place, but I know you perform there. Legendary rustic, epic party place, live band, Cajun dancing. What's Cajun dancing? Is that like you dance with an alligator? I don't know what that is, but
you eat alligator, then you dance with a healthy shot of Tabasco or an Abita beer.
There you go.
Well, Tipitina's is named after the famous Professor Longhair song called Tipitina. It's at the corner of Tchoupitoulas and Napoleon. It's this big warehouse, ramshackle, kind of two-story bar. It's just a mainstay, and it's right at the corner where all the Mardi Gras floats rally for the big Mardi Gras parades. And it's just a magical place. When I was going to school there, I would come down to see bands like the Neville Brothers or the Ramones play, and I've played shows there starting in the 90s where we would have a tiki bar on stage, and Peyton Manning would be the bartender on the stage. And we had a jacuzzi on the stage, and just stupidity of the 90s. And we'll play there this March for a buddy's birthday.
Really?
Yeah.
Will it be like an open birthday, or will it just be a private party?
No, it's going to be at a private event for a buddy's 50th birthday. And so Tipitina's is alive and well and just as dirty and awesome as ever.
I like the rules for filling the well. It's a lot like my book Risk On. I like a lot of the concepts here. Everybody, don't forget to text TGS to 26786, and we're going to send you 25 free copies. I'm going to send you the physical version. I like the Peyton Manning quote here at the top. Everybody,
great.
Kevin, thanks so much. This has been fun. I hope we get to do it again. Kevin Griffin.
Brother, this is the beginning of a long relationship, and congratulations on your
closing. I love the book, and I appreciate you being on our show, and hopefully you keep on making music. You know what? I can't hang up. I'm sorry. I forgot to ask you something. I'm a big James Blunt fan. I know you wrote a song for him, or songs. What have you done with James Blunt?
James and I have written. I wrote a single for him called "I'll Be Your Man," and then a song called "Telephone" and "Kiss This Love Goodbye." We've been friends since we wrote the first time in L.A. And then when I spent 2 weeks at his home in Ibiza in Santa Gertrudis, and somehow was able to write songs despite all the nonstop partying at his nightclub that he has at his house. He's an amazing guy.
I don't know
he's a
that I
force.
don't know that I could give him credit now because a lot of his songs I like, and apparently I have to look up and see, are they really your songs? Anyways, Kevin, appreciate your time, buddy. And I swear to you, right this second, I'm going to get off this podcast and I'm going to go to my Apple Music. I'm going to play Good.
Do it, brother. I feel it.
Take care, Kevin.
Hey, thank you so much, guys. Thank y'all. Cheers.
Thank you so much. I'm going to do it right now, actually. Right this second.
Yeah.
I'm gonna go to Good. I'm going to look it up on Apple Music, and I'm going to put it in my playlist. This is so cool. I'm mesmerized by it. Look at this, is right there. So cool.
We'll end the show like that too.
Yeah, for sure. Wow. I mean, it's
Well,
so
Todd,
wow. Look at it. This is great. I remember this song so well too. Remember, this is iconic.